What's up, everyone? We are back and working on this Tacoma project. So last episode I finished up the cab and prepped it. I think we're pretty much ready to go. I mean, we might have to make some minor changes, but you know, as we go, those might come along. So if you guys missed the last episode, just prep the cab, cut it. Now, today's episode, we are starting the chassis, the fun part. So I went ahead and cut these tubes, notched them, and tack welded them up, squared them, everything. This is actually going to be the floor. Some beautiful notching over here going on. Like I said, these are just tacked up. I normally like to only tack things up until everything's together, finalized, and then welding. Except obviously down here at the bottom, I had to weld the top of that because the main hoop sits on top of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and slide this in and clamp it to this table to where it's gonna sit exactly on the chassis. So it's gonna take a while to kind of get it perfect and measure it out and then clamp it to the table. All right, so here is the bottom part of the chassis. I got it clamped to the table and I moved it around to exactly where I want it as far as in consideration with the cab. So I got about 5/8 of an inch on each side right here. So now, like I said, I'll be able to remove the cab. I don't really plan on ever removing it, but just in case I ever want to, now I'll have that available. So here we are. That's what it looks like. So the next thing is gonna be to mount the main hoop on here. If you follow my Instagram, you'll know that I posted about my OCD, and so I made one main hoop and I wasn't really happy with it because up at the top, I'll explain this. This used to be part of the structure of the truck, the cab. This used to be a box that would come down here, right? And I wanted to keep that just because I didn't want this cab to be super flimsy and just, you know, when you hit it, like ding or dent or anything. However, after I made my first hoop, I realized that with that box there, it would stick forward out more than I wanted it. And I wanted that bar as high as possible and as back as possible because I'm 6 feet tall. So I want to give myself enough room for seat, helmet, padding, all of that. I always try to give myself extra room. So I ended up going backwards, which is okay. And I ended up cutting that whole box area out from left to right of the truck. And so then that made it to where I could make that main hoop go back further and also make it taller. So I went back and made a second one. But like I said, it's okay. You know, things happen. So here's the main hoop, or the second one that I made. I got it notched out for both bars, or sorry, tubes. So now I just have to kind of clean up some of those notches on the bottom, and I have to mock it up and make sure that that is exactly where I'm gonna want it. If not, I'm gonna have to move this bottom frame part. The other thing I'm gonna do today is, you see these holes I drilled out right here? So I gotta make bungs, or whatever you call them, bosses, on the main hoop, because I'm gonna have to have a tube that comes out of here that will be removable for the back section. That way the cab can still be removable. So I'm gonna mock up the main hoop real quick and I'll show you guys. So I got the hoop sitting on here. This is what it looks like, and I'll explain what I was talking about of why I remade the hoop. So as you can see where I cut this boxed area, it came down to, I think, about right here, okay? And it came down from here to like up here, and it was at an angle, which made it to where I had to have this hoop. It was a little over an inch lower and forward more. So by cutting that out, you can see now that I am pretty much all the way to the back, and I'm way higher. Like that's a little bit more than a finger. So I'm a lot happier with that. And the other reason too is because even though these will be plastic windows, this tube that's gonna stick out of here, I would have had to notch a little bit of the window if I would have kept it the other way. And I didn't like that. So right now I'm pretty happy with this fitment. I do have to clean up that notch just a tad bit, but it doesn't matter because I have to take about a 1/16 off. It's a little bit higher on this side, probably about a 1/16. You can kind of tell right there from the video. The fitment, it's actually really tight, as you can see right here, barely a finger. So taking this cab off, if I ever do, it's gonna be a little tough. I'll probably end up scratching, you know, some of the cage, but it's okay. So then I'll show you guys on the back what I gotta do after I clean up that main hoop. So back here, as you can see, I had already marked the tube to cut this cab out. Once I get it all fitted, I'm gonna put a bung in here, or a boss, and then I'll make the tube that's removable to come out here, which will connect to the back brace. And that way I can still take the cab out and also have a rear brace, because that's very important. All right, so I'm gonna finish up this main hoop, and then once it's finalized, I could mark the exact spot of where I need to put that boss. All right, so the final fitment for the main hoop is ready to go on the notches. Sits perfectly where I want it. Pretty happy with it. And I tacked up the bosses up top, as you can see up there. So this is just the last fitment to make sure I'm happy with them before I take this hoop out again and weld those up permanently. And then I'll take all the marker off of here, tack this guy on. As you can see, love the fitment, looking good. We are good here. So I'm gonna remove this and then weld those two. All right, main hoop is tacked up. Pretty excited with the fitment, everything how it came out. The bungs up here are welded up. So just to give you an idea, this is just a random tube. The back brace will actually bolt off. So it'll go in there and it'll be about, and this is really hard to hold the camera, cut off roughly right here where the finger is. So you can put a bolt inside. And then the back brace will connect to that, something like that, all the way down. So that's kind of how it works. I think you guys will get a better idea once I get that far. But pretty stoked on this fitment, everything. I love it so far. Like I said, don't ever be scared to start over on something, because later on down the road, you'll regret it. Now I'm gonna make some quick X's for this main hoop. And yeah. Now it's time to make the X's, or the X for the main hoop. So here you can see that I already did one of the tubes for the X. So on this one's a little bit trickier to get in, because that is the longest point from corner to corner. So it's kind of a pain to put it in place with the notch. You kind of have to do some Tetrising and puzzles to get it in. So I went ahead and welded it up here just because The forward hoop that goes here, I was kind of playing with it and I have to butt it up here. So obviously I got to weld this first to get that one tacked up. Same thing with the bottom. I welded all of under here so I could place this one. As you can see, this notch is kind of tricky because you have 4 corners that you got to meet perfectly. But I'm very happy with how this notch came out. So as far as on the channel, a couple of people requested to explain a little bit more as far as how I do things. So I'm gonna try and do some of that. So let's start with, like, if you're notching this X, I'm gonna work on this one. If you're a visual person like me, it's a lot easier for me to put something there to visualize it before I actually start doing it. So for me, it's like I just throw this cheap blue tape on here. I had already marked here the point where I want the tube to go. This is my center point. Now, I am very, very picky. I wanted it exactly the same as over there, so I measured so many times, left, right, from down to the bottom, all of that, to make sure that they are the same on each side. So then once it hit here, I marked the center here on the tube. That's where I want my tube to hit. So me personally, I always start with this notch because this is not a straightforward notch. You have to notch it at an angle. As you can see, this is not a flat, so you gotta kind of go like that, if that makes any sense. This one's a little straightforward, just straight right there. So I'm going to show you guys what I like to do. I already notched this bar, or tube, but I'll show you guys what I like to do. So before I start anything, I like to put the tube on the table just flat, and I mark a line on the end, on the top, here and here. This was also out here further before I cut it and notched it. What that does is it leaves the plane for when you notch on this side and that side exactly the same. So as long as you notch here and here, they're going to be on the same angle, plane, whatever you want to call it. Normally, I like to do this whole section on a table. The way I do roll cages, I normally do this main hoop with the X's and everything on the table. However, it was a little bit different on this build because I have to weld that before I could even tack that. So welding it on the table and then putting it on here was going to be kind of a pain. So this works too though, and that's actually why I put this bar here as a reference to make sure that it is flat. The main hoop was perfectly flat on the table too. So very happy with all that. So once I mark here, what you do is you kind of put the bar up. Always cut it a little bit longer. I start with this notch, like I said, because it's a little harder. And then this one, that one's pretty basic, it's just straight. So I'll show you guys. It's gonna be really hard holding this, but so I've taken the tape off. You see right here, that's my center mark. That's exactly where I want it to hit. And same thing over here. So how did this go? So you see that line was the top of the bar. Oops. Oops. How do I do this? So there we go. So if you have it on here perfect, you see how tight that is? It's not even tacked. That's just placed on there. That's how it should be. You see that? When you do your measurements and not just perfect like that, most times it'll hold itself. Obviously gravity will get this one, but you can see how tight that is. I'm moving the whole thing. Okay, so the next tip I'm going to give you guys, if I can get this out. I've seen a lot of this on the internet. People will put their tubes on and weld it like this. That's a huge no. This is right out of the notcher, okay? What you still have to do is, you need to grind all this down, because obviously, I don't know how good this camera is. You see how thin that is? You need to knock all that down. You need to knock it down so where the tube has the thickness all the way around. Because when you start welding, that's just gonna melt right off. It's super thin. So I'm gonna go clean this up and I will show you guys what I am talking about. All right, so as you can see here, you see how I knocked down the thin part of the tube of the notch. So now you're left with a flatter, it's hard to get right here, man, there's not enough light inside. So it should be right there, the thickness of the tube. That way you get a really strong weld and you're not welding just thin little scraps. All right, so now, let's see, how did this go? Maybe like that. Sorry, all right, so now, if I put it back, it's really hard to do this with the camera, one hand. Ugh. Okay, so you get the idea. It's kind of on there, right? So I'll clean all the marker off, tack it up, and then do the other side. Oh man, this keeps moving. All right, you guys get the idea. Looks great. Something like that. So I'll tack this one up and then start on the other one. So the other one is gonna have a tricky notch down in the corner. Same as this side over here. And as you can see, I went ahead, I don't want to fully remove this, but I welded around there because the tube for the X is gonna go right on top. So I gotta weld that first, that's already done. All right, so I'll just do the bottom and then we'll be done with the X. So here you have the second tube of the X ready to go. Not too bad. I'm happy with it. So another quick little trick I was gonna tell you guys. You know, people might say, well, how do you know they're perfectly even? There's a couple ways I check. So I use that angle finder right there. So if you put your angle finder on that tube, you should match it when you put it on that tube, okay? That'll give you a pretty straight tube over here. Okay, the second way, use the protractor, and if you find the angle here, you should match it with the angle up the opposite of it on the top. So mine was about 0.5 degrees off. I'm happy with that. That is pretty good. I mean, it's really even hard to get close sometimes on, you know, a digital protractor. You could like barely move it. So I'm pretty happy. So here's that. I always leave as much as I can tacked. Like if I don't have to weld it, I like to leave it tacked up until, you know, the end. I like to weld everything because sometimes you might need to go back. Let's say you hate something and you want to take it off, redo something. I don't know. It's just, you never know. So I like to leave as much as I can tacked until the finished product. So that's gonna wrap it up for this episode. On the next episode, I'll start making the forward hoops or forward bars, whatever. There's so many different names for them. That will go here and then come down and meet that guy. So your final look here at the main hoop. I guess I forgot to mention there will be a harness bar probably somewhere over here. I'm not really sure where because I haven't put my seat or put a floor on here to position it. So I will do that harness bar last once I get a seat mounted or something, because I need to know where my harness is going to be. Everything looks pretty good. Very nice. All right, guys. So that's pretty much it for today. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, anything, just to help us out. Thank you.